Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today we're going to be going over my 1943 Willys MB. So let's go over what I got in the Jeep then. So I don't have too much going on at the front of my Jeep. I don't fit any big crates or anything on the front. I like to keep all the airflow as much as I can for the cooling system. I don't have a wire cutter fitted to the front. My Jeep has no evidence on it to show that it ever had one on, so I didn't want to put one on. And I think they're a little bit iffy for driving around. If someone was to hurt themselves on it or something, I think you'd be in a lot of trouble. And it shows with kids running around and stuff like that. I think the big wire bars on the front are a bit of a liability, so I avoid them. So at the front, all I've got on is my tow rope, and it isn't neatly wrapped around. It takes ages like a lot of people do. It's literally just looped quickly so you can get it on and off if you actually need it. And what I think is closer to what I see in most of the photos of Jeeps from the war, where they've got a tow rope fitted to the front. I didn't want to sit and spend hours neatly wrapping it around, so if you actually need to use it, you'd be there for about 10 minutes getting it off your bumper. Moving on to the windscreen, I've got it folded down at the moment. I often drive it like this if that's a nice day. It's nice to get the wind in your face. I just don't go over about 30 miles an hour because it gets a bit horrendous, and remember to keep your mouth shut. At events, I'll often have this with the canvas cover on top of it. Again, if you're trying to represent something being a bit close to the front line. If you can hear gunfire, don't worry about that. That's just Norfolk for you. You get used to it. Obviously fitted to the windscreen frame, we've got the universal rifle rack. Inside that we've got the M1 carbine, which I've fitted as many of the wartime parts to as I could do, the one with the correct rear sights and the wartime Highwood stock. That tends to be the rifle that goes in here. Then some people at events have got something to look at, or car shows and stuff, that's light for the kids to handle and stuff like that, rather than a big old heavy Garand, which is worth way more money in the UK and isn't so easy for the kids to handle. But again, at shows I often will have the canvas cover over the windscreen, which obviously would cover a lot of this up, but that's still in there most of the time. So if you're having it where you're meant to be near the front line, I like to have all the glass covered like they in theory should have when they're actually being used. On the note of the rifle rack, hopefully in a month or so I should be getting a canvas cover that goes onto the rifle rack. That's something that would be quite nice to have. You don't see them a lot. One of my friends has picked a couple up, you know who you are. So hopefully, as long as it fits on and it's all fine, we'll get the nice canvas cover that goes on top of the rack, which you don't see that often, not around here anyway. Moving on to the side of the Jeep, we've got the Pioneer tools in the side. I know some reenactors like to leave these empty because probably too many Jeeps have them fitted. There's way more Jeeps didn't have them on than did have them on. But when I bought my Jeep, it came with a British T-handle shovel and an axe, an original axe. I kept the axe, swapped my T-handle shovel with my friend who had an American one. So now we've got them. I've done them both up. They look nice. They've been on there for years now. I decided to have them on there just because I like to accessorise, and if people don't like that it has the tools on because too many of them have the tools on, well, basically tough shit, I suppose. Moving on to the passenger side of the Jeep, there's not much to see here. On the side of the wing here, we've got a blanket fitted onto some footman loops. This was put on there because when I got this Jeep, that had a British fire extinguisher, a chrome one from the 60s, from a sports car fitted to the side of it for some reason. The previous owner decided to drill a load of holes in the wing and put that on there. So I took that off, but I had these four holes in there, or so, 4 or 6, and I decided I need something to do with these holes. I don't have a welder or anything because I couldn't really plug them in easily. So I thought, looked at some photos, and I see lots of pictures, especially references from a Fort Knox stowage manual for Jeeps from I think 1942, which showed towels, and well, not towels, but blankets placed on the wing hair and on the wing hair. So I thought, perfect. So I got myself some footman loops, drilled a couple more holes, popped the loops on, and I put a blanket there. So moving around to the back of the Jeep, my Jeep's obviously got the bustle rack fitted to it. We've got one of these nice reproduction ammunition crates. This one's a 30 cal ammunition crate. These are very handy because they're actually kind of covertly hinged, so you can lift them up like this and use them as a storage box for events. Put your food and drink and whatever you need inside here. I've added a bit of self-adhesive Velcro to it to keep it nice and shut. I've had this one for like 5 or 6 years now, so it's getting a real nice wear to it. So that's in there mega tight, that's never going to come out. You can barely lift it out if you need to, that's a right fight. So there's no need to worry about it jumping out on the road or anything like that. Underneath the crate, you've got a big canvas cover here. That's general use if you need to, that's there, but to be honest, that never comes out because that's become part of the display, as it were, and nothing in the back here tends to ever come out. It's there if you need it in an emergency though, you just have to yank the crate out. And next to that rolled up you can see a pup tent. That's an entire pup tent there. I like to have that in because if the Jeep's going to play the role of something like a reconnaissance vehicle, it may be out for some time. the soldiers might have to have somewhere to cover at night or something like that. So I just threw the tent in there, rolled up. I think that's a nice little addition. Then in the middle here, tied down with a couple of straps to stop them banging around, you've just got a 50 cal ammunition tin and another 50 cal ammunition tin that I've painted white and put a red cross on, which I use as my first aid kit. That's actually full of first aid stuff inside there in case it's ever needed at a show in an emergency. Another reason I made the tin like this is because there are actually wartime photos of 30 cal and 50 cal ammunition tins that have just been quickly sprayed white by the soldiers and used as first aid kits. So I thought that was a nice little addition. Because my Jeep doesn't have the first aid kit under the dashboard like a lot of Jeeps do. This Jeep was built before that became standard fit, and there's no evidence underneath it of a bracket ever being fitted, so I didn't want to fit one of them to it. So as I don't have that first aid kit, I thought it might have been plausible that the soldiers would have come up with their own and just chucked it in the back. And then lastly, for the bustle rack really, on this side we've got one of the transport crates for 30 cal ammunition tins. There's two empty 30 cal tins inside that. That's just shoved down there. On top of it, we've got another wool blanket, and on top of that, we've got a toolbox for a machine gun. Now, technically, this toolbox is for a 30 cal, not for a 50 cal. I do not have one of the bigger 50 cal versions of it yet, so this is what I'm going to have to make do with. That's set up in here, strapped down, so it's nice and tight, and it's not going anywhere, but you can actually access it to use it at events. So you've got a nice bit of storage there. And although it looks like there's nothing holding it down, that's actually very tightly strapped in there, and that's not going to go anywhere. And then obviously you've got your standard rear fitting piece of equipment. You've got your spare tyre here, you've got a jerry can here which I've done up and put the octane label in, and then I've got an extra tow rope which I just stuffed down the side here because that's handy to be able to grab if I ever need to pull stuff out of an event or something like that, or someone needs to pull me out of a mess at an event. You never know, these things do happen. So that's basically the bustle rack done, and that stays like this, and it's got plenty of storage for you to use at events, and it all looks fairly reasonable, I think, as a representation of an Armoured Division Jeep. So now let's go over the interior of my Jeep. Now let's start with the obvious thing. This is a gun truck, so we've got a very late pattern M31C pedestal here, and today we've got that with the 30 and 50 combo cradle, which I'll show you more detail in a minute, with a lovely replica 50 cal made by Chris Golding, and the feed tray on the side with a 50 cal ammunition tin and a few 50 cal rounds just so it looks the part. Now I know a lot of people say there's too many Jeeps with 50 cals around, but there's only one other one that I know of around here that I tend to see fairly regularly, so I'm not too bothered about that. I don't care if some events have got 40 Jeeps with 50 cals in. If the events that I'm at, this is the only Jeep with a 50 cal in, who cares? And again, quite a lot of the time this has a 30 cal in it, but for now we're going to rock with a 50. Also, aside from that, if I'm trying to portray this as, say, a platoon heavy weapon section Jeep or something like that, I had a document once that listed all of the equipment that that Jeep would have in it and in its trailer, which got lost when I lost a hard drive, unfortunately, and I cannot for the life of me find it again. But in that file it stated that in the trailer there would be two 1919 30 cals, and that the 50 cal would be mounted in the Jeep in this pedestal. It was a late war piece of equipment, or a late war document I should say. It was from early 45, so it listed as having the A6 30 cals, one for the bipods instead of the tripods, and it was also why it mentioned this pedestal with the combo cradle instead of the earlier version, because you aren't going to really seen these early on at all, not from what I can tell anyway. In reality, most of the time what you're going to see in the war would be the earlier version of the pedestal that didn't have the support legs on it, and what would have had a little bar down the back of it to lock this in horizontally like what it is here, and that would have just been using one of these tiny little cradles like this instead of the big combo one. And these are a bit useless really, especially for a 50 cal, because you've got nowhere for the ammunition, so that just hangs down the side, and that's a lot of weight and stuff. And they're also not very great when you're driving around, especially these old vehicles. The ones without the support legs, if you've got something like a 50 cal inside them, that pulls a lot of wobble, that's a lot of strain on the body and the frame, and that can actually damage the Jeep. So although this is a very late version of the pedestal, I'm happy that that's the one I've got because it gives me the most security when I'm driving. It's the easiest one to use. The cradle locks everything in securely, so I don't have to worry about little kids smashing their face on anything, throwing it around, and we're all good. One thing you do have to be careful of with the 50 cal is if you've got this in like this and you're not going to keep it locked, if you want it to be able to be played with by the public as it were, you really need to put the screen down, because when you pull out the traverse, or the horizontal lock I should say, and let it down, you can see the barrel drops, and if the screen was up, that's just going to go bang on the screen, which has happened more than once, I'm afraid to say. So we've learnt our lesson, and now if the 50 is in it at a show, the screen definitely tends to be down, just to avoid this happening if people want to actually see how it works. So for those of you that have never actually seen how these operate, basically now that it's not locked in, you've got a whole 360 traverse, and the elevation, as you can see, can go down quite a long way and can go all the way up to basically vertical for anti-aircraft defence. So they're very flexible, and this is at events a nice thing to have because it gives people something to look at. You can show them how it operates. The kids can have a go if they're big enough. I don't want no toddlers being thrown up in the air or anything like that. But it's just a nice thing to have at a show, that so you can show people how that would work. You can kind of demonstrate how these would have been used for anti-aircraft defence and that sort of thing. So it's a nice item to have. And when the 30 cal is in it instead, that's the same sort of thing, just on a much smaller scale, which is a lot easier to handle. And when you're done with the 50 cal and demoing it, and you want to lock it in, you just remove the pin from its little storage area there, pull the gun down, line the two holes up, stick your pin through, rather stiff, spin it round, and basically tighten up this bolt here, well, bolt for lack of a better word, and if you turn it the right way, it works better. Give that a tug, and now the gun is locked in position horizontally and it can't traverse at all, so you're safe to drive on the road. A quick note on the driving on the road part of the 50 cal, because some people will wonder about this. You can drive with them on the road, but you really need to have them covered up unless you potentially run the risk of running into some problems, although I've never known that to happen to anyone. But when I drive it, I tend to have it covered up with a proper canvas. So in the back of the Jeep on the floor there, under that M1 helmet, you see that big canvas bag? That covers up the entire 50 cal, the cradle, the ammunition tray and everything. So when I'm driving around to and from an event, that will be on the gun. So in terms of what other items I hold in the Jeep, on the back here, tied down with a bit of rope so it can't move anywhere, but you can easily access it, is another ammunition crate just for additional storage. On the passenger seat here, I keep the web gear that would be applicable to the driver for the M1 carbine. So this is the M1 carbine weapon. That's got the ammunition pouches on it, a compass, a canteen, a medical kit, and an M3 fighting knife. And I just have my little M41 jacket there if I aren't using it. On the back seat here, I have an anti-tank mine crate. This is basically used as a trunk. That's just kept in with a bit of rope so it can't go anywhere. This is a very handy thing just to use at events, and also provides a nice seat to sit on. I do have the canvas half doors for this Jeep. They're stored underneath the cushion, underneath this trunk. And then underneath the seat itself is where I store the windshield cover when it's not being used on the actual frame itself. Behind the seat, there's a little bit of rope, an entrenching tool I've just popped in there in case I need it. And you do have the crank fitted to the back of the Jeep in case you need to use it in an emergency. Also underneath the seat is the tyre pump, which I cannot access without taking the crate off, obviously, because you have to fold the seat up to get to it. On the other side of the Jeep inside here, we've got 3 50 cal ammunition tins, so you can use them again for additional storage, stuff like that. This one, for example, has got my fuel filler hose in it for if I need to refuel, because I refuel the Jeep from jerry cans, I don't take it to the petrol station. So these are obviously handy because I'd have them to load the 50 cal with, and it also provides me somewhere to put some bits and pieces. Inside the Jeep down here, I've got a little musette bag just to throw other bits, odds and sods in, and another musette bag here, which I placed here because it was in the same stowage manual as the blanket, showing this as a position for a field bag or a musette bag. So I just keep bungee cords and stuff in there for when I have to cover this up at night if I'm at an event, so it doesn't get covered in rain or whatever. So pretty good setup, I think. And down the side here, you've just got an actual wartime filler hose for an American style jerry can, which I never use because they're awful. Hello guys, Future Truffle here. So in a turn of events that will shock absolutely no one, I am a useless moron. So I just got home and I'm doing all of the editing and stuff like that for the video, and I realised when I got to the outro, as it were, that I managed to record the entire section with the camera being turned off. And that works for everyone, I think. So let's just pretend that that didn't happen. I'll have a stroke whilst I'm mad. Let's just pretend that that didn't happen, and that you've just seen me sit in the Jeep and say thank you for watching the video. I hope you like the Willys MB and all of the equipment I'll put in. If you have any questions about it, please put them down in the comments section. If I've done anything wrong or something that you find particularly offensive to your Jeep or whatever, then give me a shout and we can have a chat about that as well. But thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you next time. So now pretend that this is seamlessly transferring into me driving away in my Jeep. See you soon. Oh, come on, girl.